All of us have had to have difficult conversations throughout our lives, moments where we've spoken up in a work meeting or pulled aside a family member or friend to tell them a hard truth. While these moments are necessary, they can be uncomfortable and jarring. As a parent or caregiver, there are many times when this happens. It can be as small as talking to your child about why they're in a timeout, or as big as explaining why mom and dad will no longer be living together. For Dr. Elena Lister, she's no stranger to these extremely difficult moments. Lister is an associate professor of psychiatry at Cornell University and Columbia University Medical Centers. She works as a therapist and grief counselor, but is also a mom herself to two daughters, Molly and Liza. Her younger daughter, Liza, was diagnosed with terminal leukemia early on in life. In the new book, Giving Hope, co-authored by Lister and Dr. Michael Schwartzman, Lister recalls the conversations she had with some of her daughter's classmates about what was happening. She conveyed that Liza was very sick and was not going to live much longer, but that her family was making the most of the time she had left. The kids shared their own feelings and then asked questions. Some asked if Liza was nervous, if she was in pain, or if she'd ever come back to school. As the listener, you might be wondering, why did she share this news with such young kids? Why not just keep things vague or stay silent?
What we have found over decades of experience, as well as therefore what we believe, is that the not talking about it is what leads kids to be more anxious. And I've had personal experience with this as well as professional, that when you can bring it out and talk about it with a child, they get the chance to ask their questions, to tell you what they're thinking, and to feel not alone with it, so they get less scared. So that protective instinct that comes from such a well-intentioned place actually ends up impairing the child in terms of dealing with what is an inevitable reality, sadly, in life.
Through her work as a psychiatrist, Lister helps patients have these difficult conversations about loss and death with their children. And these moments don't just come up when there's a loss within the family. They happen for all children. For instance, it can be when they hear about a prominent death, or even a school shooting.
A decision that every parent has to make individually, but what we recommend is that if it is something that a child is inevitably going to hear about, which these days is probably most things, because even if they don't find it out on the internet by themselves, they might find it out from their 19-year-old cousin or somebody else, that you open up the conversation with the child about it.
Lister notes that many parents underestimate just how shockingly aware children are of what's happening around them.
If you, as an adult who's taking care of a child, are experiencing some sort of loss, if you don't choose to talk with a child about it, they're still going to sense that something is up with you. You're not yourself, no matter how hard you try to hide it and put on a smile and stiff upper lip. But children are really perceptive. They sense that something is off. And often a child will worry, and they may come to think it's something worse than it really is. So we believe that by being honest, by being open and direct with a child, telling the truth, and as we say, nothing but the truth, but not necessarily the whole truth, at least not all at once, you're providing a child with actual sense of support and safety and clarity.
While these discussions are important, is there an age where kids are too young to be exposed to death?
We're generally thinking of a 3-year-old and up at any of these kinds of situations, because once a child is in school, they are around other children who may be talking about things. Internet may be accessible. So really around 3, but I recently had the experience of the mother of a 2.5-year-old asking me how can she talk with her 2.5-year-old about the fact that this 2.5-year-old's grandmother had died, because the 2.5-year-old kept asking, "Where's grandma mom? Where's grandma mom?"
In this scenario, Lister advised the parent to be upfront with the toddler about the fact that his grandma had passed away and explain what this means.
If a child is asking for more information, it means that they need it, and you offer what they ask. I suggest you answer what they ask and you don't answer more. Sometimes when we're nervous, we like fill in the blank with lots of talk. So I say stay very, very close to what the child is asking.
In the book, Lister and her co-author outline specific strategies and tips that adults can use as they go about having these talks with their children. The first tip is to put away all distractions like phones and tablets and gather as a family to talk. This conveys that the news is being faced by everyone together. The second piece of advice is to bring backup. Ideally, it should be you along with your partner or someone else who's close to you.
So that if one of the adults is upset, the other one can step in. Or if one adult suddenly feels like a deer in the headlights and doesn't know what to say, the other adult can step in then.
Once you're ready to begin, keep the information minimal. Don't go into specific details about the death or event. Say what's happened, and then give some time for them to process the information.
Expect the unexpected. You thought that a particular child was going to break down in tears because they really, really, really were very close to Grandpa Paul. But it turns out that they just look at you, kind of mute, and then say, "Can we have mac and cheese for lunch?" And that's okay, because it takes a while to process things, because every child has their own reaction. Two siblings, one may cry and the other may not. And we want to advocate that you convey that that's fine. It doesn't mean that one sibling loved the person more than the other. It is just the reaction that each of them are having right then.
And it's okay if they have questions. If you don't know how to answer in the moment, Lister says be upfront with how you feel.
It is fine to say to a child, I really want to answer that question and talk about it with you, but I need a few minutes to think about it. So how about if we come back to that question after lunch? And then, of course, you must come back to the question after lunch, even if you're still feeling a little uncertain. But it gives you a chance to kind of sort yourself out about how you might want to answer.
One example is how to answer one of the most common questions that children tend to ask. Did it hurt when they died?
You can say, depending on the reality, it did not hurt when Grandpa Joe died. Or that Grandpa Joe's had a lot of pain. The pain went away when he died, because indeed, we believe that people don't feel pain after they die. So you want to offer something to your child, I believe, that is truthful, but also has an element of reassurance in it. And then if the question is, what happens when you die? I believe a fair answer would be, no one knows for sure. We in our family believe, and then if you have a religious or cultural belief, you can tell the child.
Lister says that after breaking the news, be cognizant of how your child is doing. In some cases, they may need additional help.
Some children right away may have difficulty sleeping. Maybe they're not eating as much. They're unfocused in school because they're preoccupied with what has happened, if it's somebody really immediate in their life. But we believe that's natural and inevitable. And when you would want to try to involve a professional or ask a professional whether it might be time for their involvement, might be 4 to 6 weeks after a significant loss, when a child is still demonstrating those things and cannot engage in regular life. They cannot stay in school yet. They're not sleeping. They're not eating. Maybe they've regressed. They've begun to wet the bed again or talk in baby talk. If those things are going on for more than 4 to 6 weeks, at that point, we think it's worth an adult in that child's life asking pediatrician, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, the school counselor, a religious person. This is what I'm saying. Do you think they need more support?
Loss and death are just another part of life. Some people experience these events at a younger age than others, and that's okay. To find out more about this topic and our guest, Dr. Elena Lister, visit viewpointsradio.org. Also, check out her book, Giving Hope, Conversations with Children About Illness, Death, and Loss, available online and in bookstores. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price. Coming up on Viewpoints.
washing dishes, grocery shopping, childcare, cleaning, clothes washing. They are relentless because they have to happen every single day. And if you miss a day, it's very obvious.
The gendered roles many of us fall into. Then,
there are shipwrecks in cornfields in Kansas. There are wrecks in the deserts of Namibia. There was even a wreck found under the wreckage of the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Uncovering the lost ships of the past. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.